Now we're going to take a look at the FIFO method when determining the cost of goods sold, which is the expense recognition once items are sold, and determining what the inventory balance will be. So as you can see here, this is a company's inventory, which shows us our beginning inventory as of October 1st, which is carried over from the previous period, items that weren't sold yet or assumed to not be sold yet. Then you have the additional purchases that were made in October 6th and October 10th. So in total, we have 3,800 units. Let's see if I can write on here. There we go. We have 3,800 units that are currently sitting in the inventory of a business and valued at $22,200. So this is how much it costs the company. Now on October 13th, the company sold out of 3,800 units, 2,500 units at $35,000. So that's the revenue that was generated by the company. So what the company has to do is, from this 2,500 units that were sold, they have to figure out what the cost of goods sold will be when using the FIFO method, so that they can go ahead and report the expense in their books. Okay, so let me zoom in here so we can see how this method is put to work. So under the FIFO method, first in, first out, this method assumes that the oldest purchases included in the inventory account were sold first, which means that those purchases will be included in the cost of goods sold calculation. So the direction that you will have to start when using the FIFO method when it comes to determining the cost of goods sold is you have to start at the beginning of the period and work your way down to the end of the period. Okay, so I'm going to put on here, hopefully this makes sense. You're going to have to start from October 1st and work your way down to October 10th. And so what you're doing is, because you have to know you have to figure out what the cost of goods sold is going to be under the FIFO method, you're going to grab the beginning inventory, what's in the beginning inventory first, to determine what should be included in the cost of goods sold, all the way down to the end of the period, or all the way over to the end of the period, which is in this case October 10th. Okay, so here's how it works. So 2,500 units were sold. This means that we need to include all 2,500 units in the cost of goods sold calculation, which is the expense that we're going to recognize. So on October 1st, the beginning inventory, if I scroll up here, I'm going to do a lot of scrolling up and down. You see that we have 800 units that's sitting in October 1st inventory. We're going to take all 800 units and we're going to include it in the cost of goods sold calculation. So that's where you see 800 units at $4 a piece. That's going to give you $3,200. Okay, that's no different than up here. All we did was we took all 800 units because the company sold 2,500 units. So out of the 2,500, we're going to take 800 units from the beginning of the period. Okay, so we did that. $3,200 is going to be recognized as an expense or included in the cost of goods sold calculation. And so over here on the right side, this is just for good practice. This is something that I do to keep track of what I've included already in the cost of goods sold calculation. So I have 2,500 units sold. That's how much is sold. That needs to be accounted for in this calculation here. Subtract out 800 units, which is included in the cost of goods sold calculation of $3,200. That gives me 1,700 units remaining that needs to be included in the cost of goods sold calculation. Okay, so what I can do here is draw a line through the October 1st batch of inventory, because this batch is included in the cost of goods sold calculation. Now I'm going to go to October 6th. So October 6th, we have 1,000 units that's sitting in the company's inventory account on October 6th. That's the additional purchases. Since we have 1,700 units remaining, we're going to take all 1,000 units from October 6th and include it in the cost of goods sold calculation. That's $5,000. And then from here, we're going to subtract out $1,000 right here because we've included the $1,000 into the cost of goods sold calculation. And that gives us 700 units remaining to be included in the cost of goods sold calculation. So we go back up here. I can go ahead and just moving the thing here. There we go. Go ahead and draw a line through the October 6 purchases because this batch of 1,000 units from October 6 is included in the cost of goods sold calculation. So we're good there. Lastly, we have 700 units remaining, right? So we need to include these 700 units in the cost of goods sold calculation, which means that on October 10th, we scroll up here. You see there's 2,000 units sitting here. 2,000 units sitting here as of October 6th. So from that 2,000 units, we only need to take 700 units from that batch of 2,000. Because we have 700 units remaining to be included in the cost of goods sold calculation. Now that gives us 4,900 units. $4,900. And then we go over here to the right side. We'll go ahead we'll go ahead and include the 700 units into the units remaining here, which leaves us with 0. Okay. So the reason why it's 0 is because we've included all 2,500 units into the cost of goods sold calculation. So when using the FIFO method, the expense that's going to be recognized in the company's books for the revenue that was generated of $35,000 is going to be $13,100. And that's taking $3,200 from October 1st batch of inventory plus $5,000, which is from October 6th batch of inventory, plus $4,900, which is the October 10th batch of inventory. That gives us $13,100. Okay, so again, this is just an assumption method. This is a allowable method that is used for companies to record their expense that is aligned with the revenue that's generated in their books. So this is a logical method, meaning that what's first in should be the things that are first out. So this is why you're starting at the very beginning of the period and you're working your way down to the end of the period when it comes to including what's in inventory into the cost of goods sold account, the expense account. Okay. Now the next thing to do is to figure out what the ending inventory balance will be after making these sales or after recording the expense. So we scroll up here, we see that October 1st batch of inventory is already included in the cost of goods sold calculation. October 6th, same thing. October 10th, we didn't include all of the units in the cost of goods sold calculation. Out of the 2,000 units, we've included 700, which means that 2,000 minus 700, that's going to give us 1,300 units that's still remaining in the company's inventory account. So October 10th purchases, 1,300 units that's still sitting in their accounts at $7 each, right? Because $7 each. That's going to give us $9,100. That's going to be the ending inventory balance when using the FIFO method.